The special open caption screening of Grandma, presented by Kramer's Films That Changed the World, in association with Sony Pictures Classics and Joanne Dean's Signmation, was a truly inclusive experience. The deaf audience was elated that there was finally something for them, finally a movie that they could see on the big screen and experience just like the rest of us. Here are some highlights from our Grandma event. And by sharing this, we hope that it will inspire and motivate filmmakers and studios to join forces and make your films accessible by having them captioned for deaf audiences, so they can experience film the same way that we do. This is the deaf version of Applause, and we applaud you.
Hi, Kramer's Films That Changed the World, and the founder of the Grandma Gang. And we're here tonight after the first open caption screening event and signed panel Q&A, which I was so proud to moderate, of Grandma, Paul Weitz's Grandma. Paul was a special guest panelist, and I'm here with the other two, Troy Kotsur and Jevon Whetter. And I wanted to ask both of them, what were your thoughts on not only the film, but how did you feel about the inclusive screening tonight, the open caption, the experience in general, and then also being on the panel? How was that for you?
This is Jevon speaking. Thank you for the accessibility of open captions. We can enjoy the film at an equal level with the audience, both inclusive, and it was a wonderful movie. Really, it was. There was real people in real situations and completely immersed, and I forgot that I was actually watching the movie while I was there. Each scene, just going through it with them, there was so much more in this film, and I was completely captivated. Also tonight, it was so amazing because there's a history that any movie that's publicized with no captions, and Grandma was the first one tonight. I forgot that me and Jevon, as we were watching the movie, we didn't expect no captions, but then we saw these open captions and we thought, wow, finally we're involved, and they're able to provide captions for us, and this is a new experience, and there was such a diversity within this movie too. And it opened my eyes up, of a new awareness of each other and a different comfort level that was exposed to us tonight. And I was happy to be part of this discussion panel as well. I feel very honored.
Hi, I'm Kramer. Welcome to the first open caption screening of Grandma. And Grandma is the first of the open caption screenings that I'm going to be incorporating into my cinema series. So this is a first on so many levels, but it's also the launch of an accessible cinema experience. And I wanted to bring up right now my partner, Joanne Dean.
Kat and I have come together. Kat's very well known again for her series, Kramer's Films That Changed the World. So we thank Sony for giving us this screening. You're in for a big treat.
The filmmaker of Grandma, Mr. Paul Weitz.
Thank you, Kat. It's really amazing to be here. I so appreciate you having me, honestly. And Kat, thank you so much for doing this, and Joanne, thank you. And I do hope you enjoy the movie.
What was your inspiration for Grandma? And since you wrote it for Lily Tomlin, how did you go about getting her to commit to the role?
There was something so interesting to me about her, and poignant, and she was so dedicated. And I knew she was funny, but I felt like she had so much edge. But it ended up being a really lovely collaboration, and she's a very kind person, so.
What about the rest of the cast? It's a marvelous cast, and I just wanted to know, how did you go about finding them.
I'd worked with Marsha Gay Harden before, and that was the only actress who, when I brought her up to Lily, Lily seemed a tiny bit intimidated. She said, "Oh, do you really think she would do this?" And so I thought that'd be a great thing, because this is the only character who intimidates Elle. And Sam Elliott, my brother, had done a film with, and I thought Sam would be really interesting because he's usually quite stoic and masculine, and I thought that was a great place for that character to start. And Julia I had seen in a film, a small film called Electric Children, and I liked her a lot. And the way I did the film, I just chose whoever I wanted.
Why are you selling those books?
I need some cash.
What about the kissing scene between Sam Elliott and Lily? How much rehearsal, and that was all one long scene, but can you talk a little bit about how you got them to approach that? I mean, was there a lot of rehearsal?
I used to do a lot of rehearsal for films, but I think that maybe that was more about my own nervousness than about doing it for the actors. I'll do as much rehearsal as somebody wants, but also I feel that sometimes things can get a little bit stale.
I wanted to know if you've ever considered, or have you explored the topic more deeply about casting people who are either deaf, little people, or people with disabilities in non-traditional roles. It would be so great if we can see more of the ordinary people in ordinary life situations.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I'd like to turn that over to Jevon and Troy.
Okay, Troy speaking. Well, first of all, while I was watching, I remembered, a full film that I did, a feature film about people, and I was wondering, how do deaf people work and direct? And I tend to write stories, on a board, try to conceptualize what it's going to be like. But every morning, at breakfast time, I tend to get all the crew together. We talk and discuss, eat, even while they're, eating, they're talking, and poor interpreter has to try and understand what everybody's saying. And sometimes there's miscommunication, but then I have my board behind to back me up. But I have the interpreter come a little earlier, explain to them about my concept and so forth. And sometimes I'm afraid because the interpreter might get stuck or blocked and doesn't know which word to use, and we lose time that way. So I give them an idea of what we're planning. We think about how we're going to do it, and then everybody comes and it all runs smoothly. And then the sound, they look to me for sound, and I'm like, well, I can't hear anything. How did the actors sound when they're talking? And, who's the director of sound? That person I bring over. They can sign. They try to describe the situation in terms of the sound, whether it's going to be flat, whether a word needs some more inflection or not. And, whether they're inspired, then I check on the sound, and if it's okay, great. If not, we do it over again. And then finally we get it right, and that's a blessing, And that's how we get work going.
Amazing.
And done. So it's very time saving as well. So I do recall, while I was looking back in my time, my grandmother, who was deaf, happened to enjoy a lot of silent films, and they had captioning. And then one day it dawned on me, talkies came about, and the deaf then were isolated again. But with silent films, with deaf people acting or hearing people, you can see, like Charlie Chaplin, he was deaf. And they've had a long history, and a lot of times, when sound was presented, we'd fallen behind. But now, deaf are making a comeback. And at AFI, the story and everything is like your own experience. That's what they told me. And I had to bring that out. I had to write my story. Because that way people would understand better, and I would help myself understand better in terms of what I see and how I go about doing things. And after I was established at AFI, Inside Trick was like a story of an 8-year-old boy and a coach, a deaf coach, for Orlando School for the Deaf, and they were champions in track, and that happened in 1986. So Troy is actually going to be the lead actor, the head coach, and I had to, start up myself in terms of who's going to write this. So I took the first step forward to write it, And unfortunately, many writers who are out there, you know, we need more. And the script is like a blueprint. You know, the diversity starts there. And then the roles happen. And then everything else.
I have to interject here that with CACC, one thing that Joanne and I are spearheading is inclusive screenings, but it's also to further casting and filmmakers who are not only deaf, but for diversity and to make everything inclusive, and also to advocate for co-productions. So that's what these kinds of screenings are all about. It's for everyone and for the casting to be more diverse and to open up those avenues.
You know, all the elements fell into place. I really appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
With that said, thank you so much for coming. I wish we had more time, but it's a wrap.
Kat Kramer here with Beverly Todd. And Beverly has been so supportive. Actually, you came to my very first, the debut of Kat Kramer's Films That Changed the World. So what Joanne Dean and I are trying to do is bridge the gap that exists and bring the worlds together of the hearing and the deaf, but also make it inclusive and diversive. So I'm so glad that it struck a note with you.
It was a beautiful film. I absolutely loved it. I loved all the acting. Everybody, you've got to see this film. It's a brilliant film. It's well written. It's well acted. All the characters are believable and real, and it touches your heart.
Having a film for a deaf and hearing audience so they can all participate. What was your feeling about that and thoughts?
It's so interesting because in all these years of my going to films and being involved with films, I never even considered the fact that it was not inclusive. And Kat, I think you're just brilliant for realizing that and for making it happen and being a pioneer actually in this area. It needs to happen. And God bless you for being so bright and so caring to do this. I thought it was great. It was wonderful to be here tonight. It was wonderful to see the communication between the hearing and the not hearing, because it flowed. I mean, there was no stoppage, and there's no reason why films cannot have subtitles. It didn't interfere with the viewing of it at all. And so congratulations, really congratulations. I applaud you on this effort.